Okay, this video is for simplifying and identifying excluded values. There are 4 of them, 2 with multiplication division, 2 with addition subtraction. My recommendation is to pause the video, give the problem a shot on your own, and then restart it when you either are stuck or have an answer. Okay, so if you're going to pause the video, go ahead and do so now. Okay, first one. We need to factor. So looking at this one, I do notice that I have a term in common, a GCF, in this numerator up here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out that -2. You also could factor the others right now if you wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite them, and I'll factor all the trinomials in one fell swoop. If there was anything else that could be pulled out at this point, I probably would. Not probably. I would do that. But again, I'm just going to leave them for now. Okay, now factoring my trinomials, this top function here factors to x minus 2, x plus 1. In the bottom, we have x plus 1 and x plus 1. In the top over here, we have 2x plus 3 times x plus 2. And in the bottom, x plus 2 and x minus 2. Okay, for division, we keep change flip, so we're going to go ahead and keep this one the same. Change the division to multiplication and spin our fraction, x plus 2 times x minus 2 all over 2x plus 3 times x plus 2. This will now allow us to simplify. So our x plus 1s are going to cancel, our x plus 2s are going to cancel, which will leave me with -2, x minus 2, and another x minus 2 on top, which you also could write that as x minus 2 quantity squared. And then an x plus 1 and a 2x plus 3 in the bottom. Okay, excluded values, you're looking for whatever would make the denominator equal 0. I usually look at my factored forms for that, although you could look at this original one. But in my factored form here, initially speaking, I have 3 excluded values of -1, -2, and +2. And then after I spin this fraction, I now have a new denominator down here. -2 was already one of my excluded values, but this one was not. This one is -3/2. And so I have 4 excluded values. You have to be careful with division. It's very easy to miss one of your excluded values, to either miss the new one that comes out of spinning it, or to miss the original one, because when we spin our fraction, this denominator down here went into the numerator, and so it's easy to miss that that is an excluded value. It was in the denominator at one point. If anything was ever in the denominator, that piece is an excluded value. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video, give this next one a shot, restart it when you are ready. Okay, factoring this, we have a factor by grouping up here, so I'm going to go ahead and do my x squared times x minus 1 and -25 times x minus 1. I'm going to go ahead and leave the other trinomials alone for one step here. I'll come back and factor them after I finish my factor by grouping. And again, I'd be looking, if there was a GCF, I could pull out a negative or a -2 or whatever, I would do so, but there's not in these cases. Okay, so factoring by grouping, I'm going to pull out this x minus 1, and what that's going to leave me with is x squared minus 25, which is x minus 5 times x plus 5. Factoring the denominator, 2 things that multiply to -24 and add to 5 would be 8 and -3. So when I break this up, I need to somehow create 8 and -3, which means I need my -1 over here so that I have -3, and my +4 here to create my 8. And so now we have our 6x squared Negative 3 plus 8 is 5, and negative 4. Double checking my FOIL. Same thing over here. We need two things that multiply to negative 36 and add to 9. That would be 12 and negative 3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do 3x and 3x. I need to be 12 and negative 3. The nice thing about having 3x and 3x is it doesn't matter where I put my 4 and my negative 1. I'll be okay. So now we have 9x squared. Negative 3 plus 12 is 9. And negative 4. Checking my FOIL. And in the bottom, two things that multiply to negative 15 and add to 14 would be 15 and negative 1. So as we break this up, we need to create 15 and negative 1, which means here's my positive 5 for my 15, and here's my negative 1. Double checking, 3x times x is 3x squared. 15x minus x is 14x. And negative 5 at the back. Okay, we don't have to flip anything because this isn't division, so now it's just simplifying. The 3x plus 4s will cancel, 3x minus 1s will cancel, x plus 5s will cancel, which will leave me with x minus 1 times x minus 5 all over 2x minus 1. With the excluded values, negative 4/3, 1/2, 1/3, and negative 5. Okay, sliding up, two more, this time with addition and subtraction. So go ahead and pause the video, give this one a shot, restart it when you're ready. Okay, so we need to find common denominators here. So factoring this term on the other side, this would factor to x minus 4, x minus 1, which means this term already has everything in the denominator that it needs, but this term, which only has the x minus 4, needs an x minus 1. So I'm going to multiply this first term by x minus 1 over x minus 1. Okay, so this first term now is 3x minus 3, multiplying my 3 to my x and my 1, over x minus 1 times x minus 4. Over here we didn't change anything on this one, so it's still the same. And now that we have a common denominator, now we can add them together. This is 3x minus 3 minus 9 is negative 12 over x minus 1 times x minus 4. This does factor to 3 times x minus 4 over x minus 1 times x minus 4, which actually means the x minus 4's cancel. This simplifies quite a bit down, actually, all the way to 3 over x minus 1. We have two excluded values at 1 and 4. One thing to be careful of with minus is that when we are subtracting this, when you subtract your numerator, if we did have more than one term up here, we'd want to make sure that that subtraction did get distributed. Okay, last one. Go ahead and pause the video, give this one a shot, restart it when you are ready. Okay. So, doing this one, let's go ahead and factor our denominators here so we can see what we're working with. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly care for a negative x squared. So one of the first things I always like to do is factor out that negative. So this would turn this negative x squared into positive x squared, this positive 2x into a negative 2x, and this positive 3 into a negative 3. I prefer that denominator myself. And so factoring this first term, we'd have our negative x minus 3, x plus 1. Over here, we have x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay. Which means this back term, it has an x plus 1 and x minus 1. It doesn't have an x minus 3. It doesn't have a negative. So I'm going to multiply by negative x minus 3 And this front term has the negative and the x minus 3 and the x plus 1, but it doesn't have an x minus 1, so I'm going to multiply by an x minus 1 here. Okay. So rewriting this, up top here we have x squared minus x over my negative, my x minus 1, my x plus 1, and my x minus 3. Over here we have plus distributing the negative and the 4. This would be negative 4x plus 12 over negative x plus 1, x minus 1, x minus 3. Okay. And so now that we have a common denominator, we can add these together. This would become x squared negative x minus 4x is negative 5x plus 12 all over negative x minus 1 times x plus 1 times x minus 3. We'd have 3 excluded values. X cannot equal 1, negative 1, and 3. Okay. And that's simplifying and identifying excluded values.